Secure Server 7, Node 19, timestamp 138.19.infinity. The Phoenix Log, the interrogation. Dr. Notori Syra Evren hung from titanium restraints that had been custom-engineered for her specifications. Wrists locked in cuffs lined with sensors that monitored her biorhythms. Ankles similarly bound, a neural dampening collar humming against her throat at frequencies designed to suppress synesthetic perception. Her shoulders had dislocated sometime in the second hour. The interrogator entered through a door that hadn't existed until he needed it. "State your name," he said pleasantly, "and confirm you are speaking of your own free will." She laughed. The sound was wet, bubbling through blood that had pooled in her throat from where they'd broken her nose earlier. "Free will? That's rich." He attached the first clip to her left breast. The metal was cold, then hot as the serrated teeth bit into flesh. She didn't scream. She had stopped screaming. "Your name," he repeated. "Your real name. What it means." "Notori." She forced the word out through swollen lips. "The Phoenix." He touched the positive terminal to the battery. Current arced through her body, just short of cardiac arrest. Her spine arched. Her teeth cracked against each other. The world went white, then red, then a color that existed only in the spaces between dimensions. The color of the Phoenix itself rising. "Syra," she gasped when the current stopped. Blood ran down her chin. "The Traveler." He attached the second clip lower. The serrated teeth found nerve clusters that made her vision fragment into 19 separate panes of agony, each one showing a different timeline where she died in this room, where she escaped, where she had never been born at all. "And the third?" Another surge. This one lasted longer. "Evren," she whispered, and her voice had changed too, vibrating now at 19 cycles per second, a frequency that made the quantum polygraph's readings spike into patterns its designers had never anticipated. "The universe itself." She smiled through broken teeth. "Phoenix, Traveler, Cosmos. A linguistic palindrome of meaning. My name is a map, and you just gave me exactly what I needed." The titanium cuffs didn't open. They folded. The metal bent inward at impossible angles, origami in slow motion, collapsing into geometric configurations that freed her wrists without breaking a single bond. Her dislocated shoulders snapped back into place, with wet pops that should have been agonizing, but registered only as data, her nervous system having transcended pain somewhere between the 19th waterboarding. "You think you caught a woman," she said, standing now, the clips falling away as the battery sparked and died. "But you just caught a mirror."
Curious, slightly hushed, hidden within the layers of the fossil record are impossible physical artifacts that shatter our understanding of natural history. You expect to find hardened bone or compressed shell, but occasionally the Earth reveals a glitch. Take the jellyfish. It is a fragile, boneless organism made almost entirely of water, and under normal conditions, it decays in a matter of days. Preserving a jellyfish in solid stone requires the instantaneous flash freezing of an entire ecosystem, locking soft tissue in place before the first hint of deterioration. The chronology is equally broken. William Webster Jr. discovered a petrified human footprint in Utah, featuring the distinct stitched impression of a sandal sole. Directly beneath the heel of that print is a crushed trilobite, a marine creature that supposedly went extinct hundreds of millions of years before humans. Biological history holds similar errors.
Cro-Magnon humans appeared in the archaeological record completely abruptly. They possessed a cranial capacity that outstripped modern humans by 100 cubic centimeters, yet they have no transitional evolutionary ancestors. They arrived fully formed. Mainstream science routinely filters these anomalies out of the professional record. Acknowledging them would collapse the doctrine of uniformitarianism, the academic belief that the planet changes only through slow, uninterrupted geologic evolution. This 3D model identifies Earth as the holosphere, a programmed containment field governed by strict resets. Geologic strata operate as digital deletion logs. Every rock layer records a system-wide overwrite, petrifying the previous world to clear hardware for the next. The architects of this system were a race known as the Anunnaki. They originally arrived on Earth to extract resources, genetically engineering an early human workforce to supply manual labor. The problem was the genetic source material. By grafting Anunnaki DNA into terrestrial mammals, they created a vessel capable of hosting sentient, immortal spirits from outside the containment system. These souls represent an uncontainable variable. If humans realized their own nature, their collective consciousness could collapse the simulation's programming from the inside. Fearing this loss of control, the Anunnaki shifted Earth's orbit and locked the planet down. They designed a closed holospheric system to keep these spirits trapped within a cycle of physical amnesia. To monitor the surface, they placed a governor in the sky. The moon is completely disproportionate to its host planet, and its near-perfect circular path is physically improbable. It is a hollowed-out observation station, deliberately placed in a dead orbit. On the ground, the Great Pyramid of Giza anchors the system. Its dimensions encode the exact radius of the planet and the mathematical constants of the solar system. These precise geometric measurements allow it to function as the central axis of the holosphere, generating the physical and spatial dimensions of our perceived reality. When we look at the night sky or these ancient wonders, we are observing the physical hardware of a cosmic prison. A prison this complex requires automated software failsafes. These cataclysm protocols are designed to trigger whenever humanity advances far enough to threaten the containment. The simulation runs on a strict mathematical clock known as the NER cycle. It forces history into a 600-year loop, with the clock hand sweeping forward to trigger specific events at fixed intervals. Whenever the hand hits a designated node, the system deploys its weapons. Simulated cosmic objects, labeled here as Phoenix and Nemesis X, intersect with Earth's orbit on a programmed schedule. The execution is devastating. The sky goes dark, the atmosphere collapses, and a thick, choking red dust rains from the heavens, rapidly burying advanced civilizations under millions of tons of mud. The great mythological disasters of antiquity, like the flood of 2239 BCE, map perfectly to these dates. They are scheduled server wipes to reboot human progress. Because the simulation runs on mathematical software, its behavior is predictable. If you decode the underlying math, the timing of the next reset becomes visible. This timeline charts a 62-date composite chronology. By reverse engineering the mathematics of the Great Pyramid and the Mayan long count calendar, 300 distinct historical events align into a rigid grid. As the timeline scrolls to its final entry, the variables converge on May 15, 2040. The prophecy for this date marks the return of the Phoenix skydragon. The planet's crust will shift, plunging major cities under the sea and initiating a global blackout. It forces an uncomfortable question. Are we the masters of our own destiny, or simply lines of code waiting for the next system wipe? The chronology does offer one final data point beyond the wipe. The year 2178, the date of total simulation collapse, when the quarantine finally breaks.
Modern geology rests on uniformitarianism. It's the belief that Earth's history is a slow, methodical crawl, shaped by millions of years of gradual change. However, the physical record is riddled with artifacts that the mainstream model cannot account for. These anomalies represent physical glitches in our accepted history, often filtered out of academic study. Consider this specific specimen. The ribbed shell belongs to a trilobite, an organism that supposedly went extinct hundreds of millions of years ago. Yet this fossil was found crushed beneath the stitched impression of a human sandal. Finding human footwear in Cambrian Herostrata suggests our timeline is not a continuous line of progress, but a series of violent, sudden disruptions that periodically reset the biosphere. Biological decay is a predictable process. Soft tissue organisms like jellyfish usually rot or disappear long before they can turn to stone. Despite this, we find perfectly petrified jellyfish in solid rock all over the globe. For a boneless, fragile creature to mineralize before it can decay, its entire environment must be flash frozen in a fraction of a second. This rapid entombment isn't limited to the sea. In the 15th century, miners in Switzerland and Peru dug into solid mountain peaks, only to find ancient, well-fashioned wooden ships buried deep within the rock. These ships represent an ocean that was instantly frozen and weighted down by millions of tons of mud and silt, which then compressed into the stone mountains we see today. When we see ships inside mountains and jellyfish in solid rock, we are looking at the physical scars of an orchestrated burial. The precision of these events forces us to look past natural causes and toward a system of intentional resets. The mathematical regularity of these disasters points to an underlying architecture within our reality. This engineered environment, the holosphere, functions as a holographic containment field designed to isolate our solar system. According to the research of Jason Breschers and ancient Gnostic texts, an advanced race known as the Homo annuna developed this simulation to study the complexities of DNA coding under controlled conditions. During these experiments, they engineered the Cro-Magnon, but the architects accidentally imbued this new species with immortal souls and an intellectual potential that could eventually threaten the stability of the system. Universal DNA failsafes protect sentient life once it is conceived. Because the architects could not simply delete their creation without violating these protocols, they had to find a way to manage a population they couldn't erase. Trapped in the simulation alongside their subjects, the Annuna retreated into vast, interconnected underground biospheres, deep Earth complexes predating the current human era. To prevent humanity from achieving its full potential, the architects utilize a cataclysm protocol. This is a scheduled maintenance routine designed to periodically depopulate the surface and reset human development. The primary mechanism for this reset is the Phoenix. It is an orbital weapon system that triggers these resets with mathematical precision. When the protocol initiates, the atmosphere collapses. The world is instantly bathed in millions of tons of red, suffocating dust that flash freezes the biosphere while triggering worldwide volcanic eruptions. This specific weapon deployment explains the instant fossils found across the globe. It is a system-wide wipe that solidifies the environment in a single moment. These events are managed by celestial governors, including our own moon. Ancient records indicate the moon was captured and placed in its perfect circular orbit in 4039 BCE, specifically to guide these cycles. Firm, deliberate, history suggests that what we record as natural disasters are actually perfectly timed executions of system-wide code. Within a programmed simulation, time is absolutely not a linear progression of events, but a series of predictable mathematical loops. Ancient civilizations dedicated their cultures to tracking these loops. The Maya used their long-count baktuns to measure time in precise blocks of 144,000 days. These steeloglyphs are specifically designed to calculate intervals between global resets, serving as a survival manual for those within the simulation. The architects used a similar system, tracking history through 600-year intervals, known as the Anunnaki NER chronology. The Great Pyramid of Giza serves as the primary hardware blueprint for this system. Its internal geometry focuses on the numbers of the living. Converting its angles and measurements into years maps them perfectly to every known reset date in human history. These monoliths and calendars are the remaining technical manuals for our reality, revealing a timeline that is far more structured than modern science admits. When we overlay the Mayan baktuns, the NER chronology, and the pyramid's internal measurements, the timelines converge on a single specific date. That date is May 2040. It marks the next scheduled return of the Phoenix and the initiation of the next Cataclysm protocol. The 2040 convergence will involve rapid lithospheric displacement, pushing oceans over the continents as the sky turns red with suffocating dust. The trilobite in the sandal and the ships in the mountains are evidence of a system nearing its next reset. Our task is to recognize the architecture of our reality before the next protocol begins.
Standard history treats the Giza Plateau as a linear progression. We are told that these monuments represent the absolute peak of Egyptian architectural development.
the final, perfect result of centuries of steady human progress. But the physical reality of the site tells a different story. The second and third pyramids were built on elevated bedrock platforms just to appear taller, and their construction quality is a step backward. While the smooth cap at the peak shows an attempt at refinement, the eroded blocks below are composed of vastly inferior masonry. This gap in quality is a global pattern. While the Great Pyramid contains an intricate network of ascending chambers and engineered galleries, almost every other pyramid on Earth features only a single, simple descending shaft. These other structures are essentially piles of rubble faced with stone, lacking the original's interior complexity. The math confirms the Great Pyramid is an outlier. Its sides rise at a precise 51.51-degree angle, a level of execution that was never successfully replicated by any of the civilizations that followed. The Great Pyramid stands as an anomalous artifact from a previous epoch. Its neighbors are cargo cult imitations, crude attempts by later dynasties to replicate a structure they found but could no longer truly explain. To find the true architects, we have to look back to 2815 BCE. This was a Technolithic era, described in ancient records as being led by Enoch, a figure associated in Sumerian tradition with a descent from another realm to establish a civilization before the flood. The linguistic evidence supports this earlier timeline. The Great Pyramid took 90 years to build, yet not a single Egyptian hieroglyph was inscribed in its original interior. The structure was finished before the Egyptian language even existed. The Sphinx shares this ancient origin. While later dynasties recarved its head, it was originally a dog-human hybrid. Look at the deep, vertical weathering on its body and the surrounding walls. This is the forensic signature of massive, long-term erosion. The Sphinx suffered this damage because it lacked a protective shell. The Great Pyramid was armored in smooth, interlocking casing blocks, serving as a weatherproof shield, whereas the Sphinx was left exposed to the environment. This environmental shielding indicates the site was designed as a resilient, long-term installation. The Enochian records suggest these builders weren't just skilled, they were non-human architects preparing this facility to survive a catastrophe they had already predicted. That catastrophe occurred in May 2239 BCE, the Phoenix Cataclysm. The North African plate subsided, and the landscape was swallowed by a global flood. For 340 years, the Giza complex sat completely submerged at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. Inside the Great Pyramid, the physical proof of this submersion is still visible. In these lower chambers and along the Grand Gallery, explorers found thick sea salt incrustations and pressure fractures where salt water had been trapped deep within the masonry. In 1899 BCE, a massive earthquake forced the North African plate back above sea level, draining the Mediterranean off the plateau to create today's delta. The forensic damage to Giza documents its history as a salvaged antediluvian survivor, placing its construction in a geological period far older than any recorded Egyptian dynasty. In 1825 BCE, Abraham arrived at this newly resurfaced, silt-covered complex. Abraham's primary work at Giza was translation. He deciphered the 144,000 limestone casing blocks that turned the Great Pyramid into an antediluvian library, preserving the knowledge of the world before the flood. This act of translation explains why identical myths and prophecies suddenly appeared in separate cultures. Creation texts and flood myths began flowing outward from this single source, appearing simultaneously in the Hebrew scriptures and the Vedic records of India. The king's chamber reveals a rigid mathematical signature. From the granite coffer to the passages, every measurement is exactly divisible by 138. That number isn't random. 138 years is the orbital period of the Phoenix phenomenon, the celestial object responsible for the flood of 2239 BCE. The Great Pyramid is not a monument to a dead king. It is a mathematical time capsule. The imitation pyramids were built by men who forgot the past, but the original was built by those who knew the